Aloha, this is News Behind the News, and I'm Leah Zimmerman. I want to welcome one of the most well-known figures in Hawaii politics, Senate President Donna Mercado Kim. She's here today to share with us some of the interesting things that happened during the legislative session and that continue to carry on today. Senator Kim, we are so honored to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
The last time you were here, you were the Vice President, and you have now recently become this session the Senate President. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how your first time was during the session.
It was very challenging, Malia. Thank you very much. I've never really aspired to be Senate President. When I was on the Honolulu City Council, I spent 14 years there. I had the opportunity to be council chair at one point in time and turned it down. I've just enjoyed being on the committees, being able to shepherd the bills through, taking care of the details, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and being able to get to the bottom of a lot of issues that we need to have legislation or not have legislation on. And that's something that I enjoy doing. I did not look forward to the administrative side of being the leader. Also, as the Senate President, you have to sort of set aside your own personal agenda. You take on that of the entire body. You represent the entire body. And so it's important that you also support your committee chair. So as a result, there are a lot of bills that will come before us that I have to support. I may not be in agreement with many of them, but because I support my committee chairman, and that's the majority position, I need to take that position. The other challenging aspect of being the Senate President for me is that I try to be consistent. If you're going to favor one legislator or give special treatment to one, then you have to give it to all, because first they find out about it, and people don't appreciate that. So I often have to say no. So I have to say no to one, I say no to all of them. Otherwise, you get really bad feelings among the group. And, people expect special treatment, especially if you're in their coalition.
Right. Well, you've had a really interesting career, because for people who have maybe known you but not followed your whole career, you mentioned you were in the City Council for 14 years, and then you were in the legislature. What year did you get elected to the legislature?
I ran in 1982 from the House of Representatives. If anybody's counting, I was 10 years old at the time. And I won by 29 votes, Leah. I didn't have any experience. I really didn't know what I was doing. I've never set foot in the state capitol at the time. But I had been aware of a number of legislators, and I had gone to school with some of them, and I felt, wow, I think I could do a good job, if not a better job. And so I decided to put myself forward at a very late time in the election period. And I ran against an incumbent, Charles Campbell, and I knew sales because I was running a modeling school at the time. I was the director of a modeling agency. Yep. And I went door to door, and I won by just 29 votes.
Wow, so you can be a testament to every vote is important.
Absolutely.
Every vote counts.
Right.
Right.
I remember, I'm a Christian and I pray a lot, and I remember going to church that morning and saying, Lord, if this is my calling, if this is what I was meant to be, then I will win. And if it's not part of what I'm supposed to be doing, then I won't. And so when I won by 29 votes, I said, okay, Lord, you weren't quite sure. You gave me the benefit of doubt, and I will have to prove to you whether or not this is, in fact, my calling. And I've, won all my future elections after that, and here I am 30 years later.
Wow, and now you're Senate President. That's been a long but a good journey, fulfilling journey, right? Yeah. And you have an interesting Senate body because you have 24 Democrats, 1 Republican, so you have a very full majority caucus room. And actually, it's the only Senate body in the whole nation with just 1 Republican.
Yes.
And you have to keep them in mind, too, right?
Whenever I go to conferences, people are just amazed that we just have 1 Republican. Mm-hmm. And I actually give Sam a lot of credit because he has to go to all of the committees, and he votes at all the committees. And he's very knowledgeable, and he keeps up with all of them. I mean, I'm not sure that I can even do that. As Senate President, trying to keep up with all of the committees and everything that needs to be taken care of, it's not an easy task.
It's a lot of committees. There's about 16, I think, right? Or is it 17 now? I think it's 16, something
16
like
and
that.
a half, maybe.
Yeah. And then you have a very important committee that you chair, which only becomes active when necessary. Can you tell people about that?
So the Committee on Accountability, and I'm not even sure I chair it anymore, but as the vice president, I was the chair of that committee, and it was only activated by the leadership. So the Senate president and the leadership of the Senate would take any recommendations or any request to have hearings on a particular issue, subject, or department. And that's how we ended up doing the Stevie Wonder concert, but
we'll definitely get into that. Okay, so one of your specialties is, well, you attended, am I right in saying you attended the University of Hawaii?
I did attend the University of Hawaii.
And your son attended the University of Hawaii. Is that right? Or
I attended the university for 2 years, and then I transferred and ended up graduating from Washington State University.
Oh, good, okay.
My son started out attending Washington State University his first year, and then he transferred to LaSalle on the East Coast in Boston.
Pennsylvania? Is that there?
No, in Boston.
In Boston, I'm sorry, right.
And he played, because he wanted to play volleyball, men's volleyball. He played it in high school.
Good.
But he went to summer school at the University of Hawaii. A couple of summers, he attended summer school there.
So you have a lot of ties to the university.
I do, and I don't tell this to very many people, Malia, but I actually was the homecoming queen.
Really? For the
when I was at
University of Hawaii? Oh, how cute.
I won't tell you what year it was.
That's great.
So
Okay.
yeah, so the university is very special to me. And
how many people can say they went from homecoming queen to Senate president? Nobody else, I don't think. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Oh, that's great. Okay, well, so, you have taken on some very powerful people in the past in terms of not just in the council, but, the different mayors where you've challenged them on budget issues and their accountability and help keep them accountable. But you've also done that in the Senate and with forming the Senate Accountability Committee. And you've done many, many good and interesting investigations that have helped us journalists because it's brought out issues that we can report on that have been important and helped get records exposed that we really had been having a hard time getting given to us before. Maybe highlight one or two or three of them, just to give people an idea of what you've looked into, because there was the transportation, I think.
The Department of Transportation, the airports. We did the hydrogen fund with DBED, Department of Economic Development and Tourism. It was an $8.5 million hydrogen fund budget. Looked into the overtime, pension spiking, and overpayments, state overpayments. So those were some of the issues that we actually covered. Let me just say this, Malia, is that, I take my job very seriously. People go to the polls, they vote, people give contributions to my campaign, and I take the job very, very seriously, and I think people want us, from what I'm told, to be accountable and to hold people accountable for their tax dollars. And it's not a game to me, and it's serious. And so if people are going to come before us and they're spending the taxpayers' money, then they need to be accountable for that. I grew up very poor in Kalihi, and so money is very important. And I don't take it lightly, and I don't think we should be wasting it.
And I know from your record that if people come before you, they better have the answers to the questions, especially if there are people in the government that are supposed to be in charge of these programs.
Right, and they need to be upfront about it. And, over the years in the beginning, and I've been doing this for 30 years, so I've been told sometimes that, you're not interested in getting the answers. And in a way, that's true. I'm interested in getting action, because over the years, we've been given so many answers and no action. It never comes to pass, and you get very frustrated after a while. And I see them over and over again. And so when people watching for the first time, they don't know the history. And so we've been lied to or misled year after year, and you get very tired. And so, a basic answer is not enough. I often have to challenge these answers. And sometimes it comes out harshly. It's not meant to. It's not personal. But it affects people's lives. Government affects people's lives. It affects their pocketbooks. It affects their paychecks. And it's very serious. And so we need to take it seriously. And I just hope that more of my colleagues would spend more time in really looking at some of these things and paying closer attention. Because so many times nobody wants to make waves. The local custom and the local ways is that, don't say anything, just let it go.
That's very much true. And I mean, we see that in the journalism here, we see it in the government here. Whatever segment you look at, most of the times there's exceptions, but people don't want to make waves. They don't want to offend someone or hurt someone in their family or hurt their financial status. We're on an island, and so
Right.
that's why you don't speak up.
Right.
But you haven't been afraid to speak up, so I give you credit for that.
No, because that's what the people voted for me to do, and if they don't want me to do that, then I always felt that I could go out into the private sector and get a higher paying job. But, I'm really serious. I want us to have a better government. I want us to have a more efficient government, and it's been trying. It's been difficult. I don't like having to ask the tough questions.
Well, one of the issues is that the public has actually come to you for some of these here investigations and said, will you please look into it? In fact, the recent one we'll definitely spend some time on is about the University of Hawaii and the money there. And but you have to take flack too, like just
Right.
recently.
Well, let me just say that.
Yeah.
Yes, the people, I don't just make this up and decide I want to go and have a hearing. People call me on the airport issue. People called, and they called other legislators, and then they called me, and I said, I just can't look into things. I have to get more information. I have to get documentation. And if you can provide it, and you can provide the proof, and you can show me that there are these problems, then I will look into it. And 90% of the calls that I get, I can't even look into it. A lot of it is personnel issues, just other things that people gripe about that it's really not our area. But when it gets to be very egregious, or there's a huge injustice, I just can't help myself but feel that, okay, I owe it to these people to at least look into it. And I tell them this, I said, the legislature doesn't have a lot of power. I know some people say we're grandstanding because we can't do anything, we can't fire anybody. But what I can do is I can expose it, I can bring it out, and after that, we'll see what happens. And many times, if people feel embarrassed about it, then they leave or they resign or whatever. But that's the best that we can do, is bring out the information, bring it out, and then let the public or the media or whoever it is then pick it up and go from there.
Now, you've had to take some flack for taking some of the big people on. For example, recently Hawaii News Now aired a half-hour show with Marcy Greenwood, who's the president of the university for now. She's going to be resigning.
Yes.
But she had a lot of criticism for you, and there wasn't really a way for you to respond in terms of during that show. I'm sure they'll have you on the news to respond to her afterward. But there was a half hour where just Marcy Greenwood was able to, she attacked the governor, she attacked you, and she attacked the former athletic director, along with legislators in general and other people. Right, and former president, University of Hawaii President Evan Dobell. So she had some pretty harsh words. What were the things that stood out for you the most, the statements that stood out for you the most during her show, and how do you respond to them?
Well, I watched the show, Malia, and I found it very interesting, and I did want, in fact, share some of the facts, because, as I said earlier, I take this job very seriously, and my integrity is very important, and the fact that I hold people accountable, I also have to hold myself accountable. And so as far as some of her statements, I want to just say that I'll be responding as a mom, because it involved my son. And what had happened was last spring, a year ago, more than a year ago, my son was in D.C. and was contemplating going to law school. And he had decided that he wanted to wait. And I kind of encouraged him. I said, well, why don't you just apply at the University of Hawaii? And he wanted to go to law school on the East Coast. I said, just apply and see what happens. If you get in, you can turn it down. If you don't, then you'll know that you may have to retake the LSAT and so forth. And so finally he said, okay, Mom. And so he said he put in his application. And I said, well, did you find out? He goes, no, I haven't heard anything. And so I thought it was a little funny when friends of mine said, hey, everybody's got their letters, orientation started, and it's done. And so my son said he still didn't get the information, and it would come to my house, and I didn't get any mail. So I thought, okay, so I picked up the phone and I called Marcy. And now know this, that Marcy and I had a really good relationship when I was Ways and Means Chair when she first came. In fact, she talked about how it was the worst budget. We helped her, and she called me a lot for advice, 2-3 times a week, on the weekends, gave me her cell phone number, and very cordial. We talked a lot, had lunch with her at College Hill. And so I picked up the phone and I said, Marcy, first of all, let me just say that, I don't want to get any confidential information. I don't want to get any kind of special treatment. But is there a way that I could find out whether or not the law school got an application for my son? I said, because he says he sent one in and he didn't get a reply. And I thought, I should at least get a rejection letter or an incomplete letter And she said, well, I can't share with you any status. I said, no, I understand. I said, but, if I can just know whether or not an application was received. So she said she'd check. Called me back and then said that the dean was on vacation and she'd get back to me, and then got back to me and said that there was an application. It turned out my son did not put in an application. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was holding him accountable like I do everybody else, and seek the answers to the questions prior to asking it. So the state.
But she brought this up during the show yesterday.
Yes, and she made the statement that I was angry, and I wasn't, and that I had said that the law school was incompetent, which I never said. Why would I do that? And that if I didn't get the answers I wanted, that I would be holding hearings in the future, which to me is so unrelated, and I would look foolish if I had a hearing regarding an application by my son. So it really didn't make any sense, and I felt very sad, Malia, and that and it's unfortunate that President Greenwood, a person of her stature, would make these representations that never took place.
It's a little frightening when you think about somebody in that kind of position and you have completely different recollections of it. Now, what were some of the other things that that you were concerned about? Because I do want to go into why we even had this show last night, and why she resigned and so on, and talk a little bit about your hearings. But was there anything else that stood out last night?
Yes, she said that we were very disrespectful and that we
meaning the legislators or the Senate?
Yes, the committee members, and myself in particular, that we ruined people's lives. And all I can say to that, Malia, is that we had unedited hearings, 2 of them that lasted about 6 hours each, and many people watched it from beginning to end, and you can still watch it. And I would just urge people to watch it. And there's also 4 10-minute clips on YouTube if you want to watch that, and you can see for yourself whether or not we were disrespectful. Now, if she is characterizing the fact that she was challenged on a number of questions or her answers, yes, we did challenge her, but I don't consider that disrespectful. So, I really don't want to give that any credence, because the people should be the judge of it.
And she was basically, for people that didn't follow it, you had, after what happened was the summary of the Stevie Wonder blunder, as we call it, or the Wonder Blunder, was that the University of Hawaii athletic department thought they had hired Stevie Wonder and put down a $200,000 deposit on an athletic fundraiser that was supposed to be at Manoa, when in fact they gave it to scammers who then took the $200,000 and were actually going to get more if it hadn't been that the Stevie Wonder agents called and said, I'm sorry, you're dealing with people that aren't actually legitimate. Mm-hmm. So there was this whole thing where they didn't look into how the money was spent, and the money was wired, and there was no accountability for who did what, right?
Correct.
And so you had a lot of people upset.
Yes.
Now, you had some people that said, and that's why you had those hearings and so on. That was the beginning of it. There was other issues, though.
Yes. Well, what happened was there were so many questions, and the Board of Regents did not bring it out and didn't have a hearing. And the public started calling our offices and the Senate President. And remember, I was not the Senate President at that time, and said that, we need to get to the bottom of it, and we need to find out what happened to the $200,000 and so forth. And so Senate President called me, and we met with Senator Takuda, who's the chair of the Education Committee. And so I said that I thought that the Education Committee should hold hearings, if even we hold a hearing. And we came to the decision that, we need to let the regents handle this. This is really their job to do so. And so they held hearing, or they had a meeting, but then it was going to be behind closed doors. And they ended up going behind closed doors. But I actually called the regents chair, Mr. Martinson, a couple days before that meeting. And I said, forget his first name, Martinson.
Eric.
Eric.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Eric. I said, hi. I said, this is Senator Kim, and I just wanted to find out whether or not that you were going to be having meetings and hearings that's for the public. And he said, well, yeah, we're going to have this meeting on Wednesday. And I said, yes, but it's executive session. It's going to be behind closed doors, and the public has been calling us. I said, they want us to hold hearings. I said, it shouldn't be us. It should be the regents. So please, have these hearings so we don't have to. And so he said, well, you're going to be pleased after the meeting. And I said, okay, we'll wait. And we decided to wait. And after the meeting, after 7 hours behind closed doors, the public didn't get any information. They didn't make any statements that satisfied them. And so I then got a call again by Senator Tsutsui, and we met with Senator Takuda, and she was so involved in the election that year that they said, the accountability should handle this, and Senator Takuda would be the vice chair. And so I finally said, okay, we'll do it. So I really did not want to do the hearing. And I scheduled a meeting with Marcy Greenwood. She called and wanted to meet prior to the hearing, and absolutely set up the meeting, and told her that I was going to be out of town a week before the hearing in China. And so the day of the meeting, about 2 hours before, she called and canceled. Her staff called and just canceled the meeting. Did not have a schedule to reschedule or anything like that. So we never really met since that day till today. Actually had a face-to-face meeting other than the hearings.
So when the hearings came about, there were people who said, okay, it's only $200,000. The university, in fact, Chancellor Apple, who's the Manoa chancellor, said, we waste way more money than this, according to my friends who work in the higher administration at different universities. We probably, I forget exactly his quote, but it was telling because he...
Actually, I have it.
Oh, okay, there you go. You got to carry it with you at all. I know, it was an unbelievable quote in a sense, because he was telling all these students and about why he had to move on from the Wonder Blender, and that it was really not a big amount of money. But what do you say to critics who say, oh, $200,000, why are you wasting time on that?
Well, it was the $200,000 in the Stevie Wonder issue was just a catalyst. It showed that there were a lot of other issues and a lot of problems, because while the president is right that we were scammed, is that how did we get into a position to be scammed? And whether it's $200,000, $50,000 or $1 million, something is wrong with your accounting system or checks and balances if in fact you can go and write a check and give somebody $200,000 without having a contract or having
insurance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so people were, it's funny, over my years that I've been in office, it's not the big ticket items, it's not the $8.5 million hydrogen fund. It's, you're going to raise the bus fare 20 cents, people get upset. You're going to institute a $1 rubbish pickup, people get upset, because they can put their arms around that amount of money. $200,000, they can understand what that is. And for them, that's a lot of money.
And also, the money kept adding up, because just to respond to you, the university spent more money, right?
Well, not just even to respond to me. They started out by getting the fact finders report. And that was problematic in the sense that the university have this pattern that every time something comes up, they quickly hire a law firm. So it was curious that they would hire a law firm to take witness statements. And at the witness statements never even took Marcy Greenwood's statement. And they didn't challenge any of the statements, they didn't challenge the answers, they didn't research, they didn't investigate, they didn't do anything but take witness statements, which I was told by the police, chief of police, that had UH in fact filed a report with them, that they would have taken these statements for free as part of the investigation.
But instead they paid a law firm for that.
Right, and then, so they paid the law firm for these statements, they put out a report, the fact finders report, then they hired another law firm. So they were paying that first law firm up to $50,000, hired a second law firm to redact the first attorney's work.
Before it became public.
Yes, to redact names out of that. And that was a fee of up to $25,000.
And it was frustrating for everybody, because you're trying to read this report and it kept being black, or white, or whatever it was. Yeah.
And the bill, though, that we finally saw just recently, so we paid $63,000 instead of the $25,000. But it also turned out, because the public and the media people were complaining about this redacted report, that the attorneys didn't even follow the law. They didn't follow the open records law when they redacted. So they redacted Stevie Wonder's name, they redacted Patricia Henshaw's name, they redacted public names that should have not have been redacted at all. And then that led to giving Jim Donovan a new position.
And he was the athletic director who had been the one trying to bring, well, he wasn't exactly the one trying to bring in Stevie Wonder, but under him, people under him.
Right.
And so, but he was fired, supposedly not for that reason, right? Or moved, I guess I should say. I don't know if he was fired, but he was moved to another position.
He was moved into a new position that they created specially. They said it wasn't created specially, but it actually was created specially. And I don't think that position had been filled since he's left. But it would pay even more than the athletic director's position. His contract was actually ending. Now remember, this took place in July of 2012. And his contract was ending in March of 2013. So he only had about 7-8 months left on his contract. And that was, I think, the concern that the governor had and a couple other legislators had, that, you know, it would probably have been better if they just let his contract run out. But instead, they created this $411,000, I forget how much it was, $211,000.
Yeah, per year for 3 years.
For 3 years, so
Right.
it came up to about $600,000 to put him in this new position, when they said the reason they're moving him is because he just wasn't a good athletic director, wasn't capable of, you know, he had all these issues and problems, but he could do this other job.
Right, that he was qualified
Yeah.
for. So in the end, they spent over $1.2 million, the university did, just through all this Wonder Blender. So it wasn't just $200,000, and it also exposed a lot of problems with processes, is bottom line.
Yes, and it showed problems with procurement process as well.
We can
And-
spend a whole nother show on that, with problems at the
can.
University of Hawaii in terms of procurement, right?
Correct.
Well, we only have about a minute and a half, so I want to make sure that if there's anything else in the show that you wanted to respond to, or anything else you wanted to bring up.
No, you know, I just feel that it's very unfortunate when, instead of, you know, people just admitting and coming out and saying, look, we messed up, or we need to fix things, to do that, instead of having to either fabricate or put aspersions on people to justify or to make excuses on why these hearings were held, or why, you know, the university is now under the kind of situation they're under, and to acknowledge that, yes, we've done many good things, but we also have a lot of problems and issues that we need to fix, and let's fix it.
And there's an opportunity coming up because the president, who's been kind of in conflict with a lot of different people in town, has resigned, or she's going to be leaving, I guess, in September.
Well, I'm glad you said resign, because she actually says retire, but it is resigning, because if she retired, she would not be eligible for pension and and her benefits. But
Because she actually has 2 more years on her contract.
she has 2 more years on the contract, and in looking over the pension requirements, she takes 5 years to vest, and she only has 4. So my understanding is she's going to take a 1-year leave of absence without pay, which shouldn't count, and then have to come back and do 2 semesters before she can vest in her retirement. And I think that's the reason why she's coming back. But if she had actually retired, she wouldn't be eligible for that.
I know, so much drama, and we're hoping that things settle down with the new leadership in the future, right?
And so much misrepresentations. And that's
Right.
why I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to clear some of this up, give the facts, because, you know, I believe in being transparent, I believe in being accountable, and certainly that's what I've advocated, and hopefully I practice that as well.
Thank you. So I wanted to show your website real quick if people wanted to know more information about you personally, and then they can always contact you or look on the website at the Capitol.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Senator Kim, for
Thank you,
coming in
Leo.
today.
Mahalo.
This has been News Behind the News. Aloha.